Hello and welcome to the M.B.Om podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. M.B.Om is a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at M.B.Om, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hello, friends. Happy 2021. Welcome to the first episode of the M.B.Om podcast in 2021. I am so excited to be back here with you after a little bit of time off. And before we dive into this episode of the show, I just wanted to give a little shout out to our sponsor, Offering Tree. Offering Tree has set out to make digital marketing fun, easy, and affordable. They are your one-stop shop for a website, scheduling software, payment, email newsletter, membership, online store, and much more. So stay tuned to hear more about them later in this episode and also to get a discount if you want to use them. So on this very first episode of M.B.Om in 2021, I wanted to talk about a couple of different things. So one, I want to talk about a social media detox/break that I took back in November and how I was able to make that work as a yoga business owner that runs their business entirely online. I also wanted to talk about taking a vacation over Christmas, how I made that happen, what it was like, the systems I set up in my business, and much more. And then I also wanted to give you a little sneak peek as to what's to come in 2021. We have lots of good stuff coming down the pipeline, and I'm so excited that you're going to be here with me for that. So let's dive in. So if you listened to my 2020 year in review episode, then you know that I was back in Canada until the end of October, and then my husband and I made the decision to travel down to Mexico, where we've been basing ourselves since then. And upon arriving into Mexico, I was feeling very burnt out with my work. I was feeling very overwhelmed with the amount of things on my plate, and I was finding that I was just getting completely lost in social media, just scrolling. And the thing with this was that I wasn't feeling good about this. I wasn't feeling like it was adding anything to my life. In fact, I actually felt like it was making me a much less productive human and business owner, and I was feeling a lot of anger and frustration with the things that I was seeing online. And this is really a reflection, I think, of how people are feeling with everything that's happened throughout 2020. And for me, I felt like the clear answer to this issue was to stop using social media for a little bit so that I could break the habit of constantly scrolling, so that I could take a little bit of a mental detox from everything that was going on. And I'm a big fan of taking breaks from things like social media or business in general, but I wasn't really sure how to actually take a social media break when a lot of what I do is on social media. So not only do I run the account Mastering the Business of Yoga for the podcast, but I also have a travel podcast that has an account with it. And then I also work with studios. So the studios that I work with have social media. And while I'm not entirely responsible for all of that, there are often things that I need to do on social media. And so I really had to rack my brain with how I was going to be able to take this break on social media without actually letting my business fall to the wayside, and without having to tell people that I was working with, oh, sorry, I'm not going to be able to work with you. So I know there's a lot of you who probably feel the same way, like they could use a social media break or use a break from their businesses, and they're just not sure how to do this. So here's what I did. The first thing that I did is I created a content calendar for the time that I was going to be away. I actually always have a content calendar for my businesses, and I either update it every week or every 2 weeks. Now, I went a little bit ahead with this because I knew I was going to take at least 30 days off social media. And I outlined everything that I needed and I sent it off to my assistant. Now, having an assistant is not necessarily a key piece for this, but having somebody who can help you out really allows you to fully step away from social media. So I told my assistant that I was going to be offline on social media for 30 days, asked if she could help out in a bigger capacity with this. She agreed to that. And then basically I just left her in charge of, scheduling and resharing and answering DMs and that type of thing. So in this way, I was able to continue posting, but not just be like a ghost on social media. So if you have somebody that works with you, this is a really great way for you to step away. Create a content calendar for the time you're going to be away. If it's 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks like I did, create the calendar for the whole time so you know what's going to be happening, and then trust your people to do the commenting, do the resharing, do the DMs. And basically my assistant was able to, let me know if there were any direct messages that I needed to check. So what ended up happening is that I did actually end up going on social media about once a week to handle a few things that were really directly for me, things like voice notes that I needed to respond to and that type of thing. So what I actually did is I used my browser on my computer for those types of things. For me, the habit of scrolling and just watching stories and really getting lost happens on my phone. It doesn't happen on my computer. So I would just pull up the browser and you can basically do everything from your browser. I find it much less enjoyable to watch stories on my browser, so I just never watched stories. And because I was taking this detox and this break, I told myself no Instagram stories. So to recap this, I made a content calendar for the whole time. Everything was laid out, so I didn't have to stress about it. It wasn't on my mind because that was a big part of it. Everything got scheduled. My assistant was in charge of all the actual on-app stuff. And then about once a week, I went on via my browser in order to actually engage with things that were necessary for me. If there was something that she wasn't sure how to respond to, she just sent me an email and then I could delegate if she was going to do that or if I was going to do that. So that's how I was able to kind of continue my business stuff in a way that didn't really make me appear offline while being offline, yet still having everything in my voice, because that was important for me. As a solopreneur, it's really important for me that everything still comes from me and it's not just coming from other people. Of course, as I grow a team, maybe that will shift and change, but for now, that's what I wanted to do. So ways that you could do this if you don't have a team or you're not in a position of actually hiring somebody. So you could use the content calendar method. So create a content calendar in something like Google Sheets or another software like Airtable or something like that, and then schedule it out. There are tons of great softwares for this. There's things like Hootsuite, which I use, Buffer, Later, Tailwind. There's a ton of softwares for scheduling social media. Get one of those, schedule everything that you want to go out. And then maybe you just allow yourself to use 30 minutes once a week to go check direct messages. This is a really great way to be able to continue your social media while taking a social media detox. So another thing that you can do, and this is actually what I did on my personal Instagram account and then also what we did over the holidays, you can actually share with people that you're taking a bit of a break. Now, this works a little bit better for shorter detoxes like weekends, long weekends, 1 week, 2 weeks. You can just share, hey, I'm going to be offline for the next couple of weeks, and just put a post up. For me, with my personal Instagram account, it really wasn't a big deal because I don't make money through that. My business isn't dependent on that. So it was fine for me to just say like, hey friends, I'm not going to be responding to anything for a while. Here's how you get a hold of me. Something that can be really great to do in your business is to say, hey, I'm taking a little bit of a social media detox. There's only going to be a couple of posts coming out in the next month from me, but a really great way to engage with me is, and then you can list that way. So something like maybe a Facebook group, which is more personal, something like your email list where people can continue to have those conversations with you. So basically you can move the conversation onto a platform that you're more excited with engaging with. So you can just tell your people, you can let them know what's going on so that you're not just kind of disappearing. Now, I mentioned Facebook groups, and yes, I know that this is social media. One of the things that I did is I put the Facebook newsfeed eradicator, it's like a Google Chrome extension, onto my browser so that I actually don't get anything on my newsfeed. It's insane the difference of time I spend on Facebook on my browser now versus before. So this is actually one thing that I've kept on since finishing my social media detox. I have the app on my phone now that I'm done my detox. So if I want to actually check it, I can check notifications there, like check the actual feed. But for me, I mostly use it on my browser for work. I use it for group stuff. And I found I would go into my group and I'd get distracted for 20 minutes by all the things on my news feed. And then I'd be completely behind for the day. This is one of the things that was eating a ton of time for me through 2020 that, enough is enough. So I highly recommend the newsfeed eradicator for Facebook. And then you can actually just go and be intentional with things like groups or advertising or personal communications or anything like that you're doing. So being able to continue my group conversation was not stressful for me. Being able to continue to run the group wasn't stressful for me. Again, I had batched the content for this. My assistant was handling a lot of it, but I love popping in there and being able to have those conversations with people, and I can really focus it in on the work side of things. So how it looked for me is I deleted the Facebook app off of my phone. I moved the Instagram app to a place that was not easily accessible for me. And then I put Facebook newsfeed eradicator onto my computer so that anything I was doing for work purposes, I was doing on my computer with the intention of just going in, doing the thing, and then coming off and not getting distracted. Now, for me, this was an amazing month. I actually hit December 1st because I did this from November 1st to December 1st, and I had no interest in going back on social media. Once I got over the idea that I check social media every day, I actually felt so good. I had a lot more time in my day. I had a lot more mental clarity, and I found that I wasn't getting as sucked into, other people's thoughts and feelings and opinions and that type of thing. And so it took me a little bit before I decided I was ready to come back. It was probably another week to 10 days before I felt like, okay, I'm kind of ready to ease back into this. And what I did as I eased back into it is I set an alert on my phone. So I'm only allowed to spend 30 minutes on Instagram and Facebook on my phone. So that really prevents me from getting into the deep scroll that I like to do personally, or that I do out of habit, and allows me to really focus on why I'm on the app, or just checking quickly or posting a couple of things. And I've continued a lot of the practices that I started prior to November, looking at doing, big content calendars to share the different things in my business. I have my assistant supporting with this, and keeping the newsfeed eradicator on my computer has been so helpful because Facebook is really just a place of business while I'm on my computer, which is so good. And then, of course, having the Messenger app means that I could have, conversations with friends without ever having to go on Facebook, which is so great. If you're not already doing that, you definitely need to be. It is so helpful. So if you've been feeling like social media is kind of overwhelming for you, yet feeling like you've got this feeling that you can't stop because you're building a business online, trust me, there are ways to do this. I just shared a bunch of them, and I would really encourage you to take a break, especially if social media is providing you more stress than anything else. The idea is for social media to be social, and if it's not feeling that way, you need to make some shifts with the way that you use it. One other thing I just want to mention before we dive into the vacation stuff is one rule that I set for myself is that I don't check social media in the morning. So I have a morning routine that I do where I get up, I meditate, I stretch, I move, I drink lemon water before I dive into work, and I don't check social media before I do all of that because it just really interferes with my headspace. So having some boundaries around social media can really help it to feel more like a platform that elevates your business as opposed to, takes you down to a person that is maybe lesser than you want to be. So I hope that if a social media detox has been feeling like something that you need to do, you feel inspired to take action on that. I am so excited to talk similarly to this about vacations in your business. But before we get there, we're just going to take a quick little break to hear from our sponsor, Offering Tree. And now it's time for a short break from the show to talk about our sponsor, Offering Tree. If you're interested in finding an all-in-one platform for online or in-person teaching, then you should definitely check out Offering Tree. Offering Tree set out to make creating your digital presence fun, easy, and affordable. With one click, you can build a website, run online or in-person live classes, sell pre-recorded classes, manage memberships and packages, and much more. Communicating with your students is seamless and easy with their automated email system and email marketing tools. Already have your own website? No problem, because Offering Tree can embed seamlessly into your existing website. They're always adding new features to their platform to make it even better. They just recently released the online store feature that lets you easily sell digital content like yoga videos, challenges, and courses right from your website. If you're looking for a single platform to take care of all of your online and in-person teaching needs, then visit offeringtree.com/M.B.Om. Offering Tree has been supporting M.B.Om for over a year now, and I not only love the product, but I also love the people. Offering Tree is providing special pricing for M.B.Om listeners, so be sure to visit offeringtree.com/M.B.O.M. That's offeringtree.com/M.B.O.M. to receive the discount. All right, now back to the episode. All right, we are back and we're diving into all things vacation. So when I worked in corporate full-time, I always had Christmas vacation. I always had around a week to 10 days off, and it was amazing because I would be able to, close out my inbox, close out the year, set my out of office, and then I would just be offline, relaxing with family and friends and really enjoying the holidays. And then I quit that full-time job and started working for myself, and the hours became much more irregular and the work became, much more irregular. And I just kind of went with the flow because when I worked, I got paid. And over the last year, I've really felt like that was not serving me and that setting some boundaries in my business was really important for me. And part of that is taking some holidays. Now, don't get me wrong, I've taken holidays in the last 5 years since I've been an entrepreneur. I've taken time off, I've set an out of office. The thing is that I'm usually pretty bad at actually sticking to this. I'm usually checking emails. I'm usually checking social media. I'm usually maybe doing a bit of work or projects in the background. And 2020 was a heck of a year. And I was really burnt out, like I mentioned. And I really felt like I just needed some time off, just some time to do whatever I wanted to do. If that was sleep in, if that was watch movies all day, if that was go for walks, explore. That's what I wanted to do. And so I actually set up my vacation a number of months ago. So back in September or October, I decided that I was going to take 2 weeks off. My husband was aligned with that. We picked the days. And with 2020, it worked out that December 18th was the Friday. And we decided we would take 2 weeks until January 4th. And that was a little bit stressful to think about actually managing and think about getting everything done and then think about not actually working. And I know there's a lot of other people who run their own businesses, who are yoga teachers, who are listening to the show, who can maybe relate to this feeling of feeling like it's hard to take time off in your business. So I just wanted to walk through a couple of things that I did. So first of all, I decided on these vacations really early on so that I was able to communicate this with the people that I worked with. So I was able to communicate this with podcast sponsors. I was able to communicate it with the yoga studios that I work with. I was able to communicate it to the yoga teachers I worked with. I put it in my calendar so that nobody could book me for anything. So having that decision early on was really helpful. So if you're looking to take a vacation, I think being able to plan it out a little bit in advance really helped me so that I wasn't super stressed about it and it didn't feel super last minute. When it came to the beginning of December, I knew I had a bunch of hustling to do to be able to finish up on the 18th. So I essentially crammed, a month into 2 weeks, which makes things super busy. Anytime you're trying to go offline, it's going to be a lot of extra work. So a lot of work, getting the podcast put out ahead of time and getting on top of that, getting everything to my producer and getting everything ready to go so that my assistant had it. And then I wanted to make sure that the people I worked with had time off too. I wanted to make sure that my assistant had some time off and that my podcast producer had time off and that I wasn't just taking this vacation, but expecting them to work. So this is why this is quite different from the social media detox. The detox was me and I had my team to still support me versus taking the holidays off and having them offline too. And so what we did is we put out a email newsletter as well as a social media post, just letting people know that we'd be on holidays for the rest of the year, and nothing went out during that time. I also let you guys know on the podcast on the last episode of the year, which was December 14th, that I would be offline until the new year. So podcast listeners aren't like, oh my gosh, where did the podcast go? It's not coming out this week. It was fully communicated. So basically it came down to planning ahead of time, being ready to do the work I needed to do in the first bit of December so I could take my vacation, and then to communicate it with everyone that I engage with. So social media, email newsletter, and then of course, the clients that I work with. And everyone was very supportive and very respectful of my vacation. The final thing that I did was I did set an out of office. So I set my out of office on all my emails to let people know that I was going to be offline from, December 19th till January 3rd, so that people don't expect an email right away. And then I went offline. And one of the cool things that I did this year is I actually removed my email inbox from the home screen of my phone. So although my emails are still connected to my phone and I can still access them if it's an emergency, I have moved it so it's not on the home screen. It's not something I can easily access. And that really helped so that I wasn't, consistently checking. And basically on my phone, all I have is a personal email that only my family and friends have so that I can check that. And I basically didn't access any work emails for the entirety of my vacation, which was so good. And the thing that's so interesting about it is the first few days, I felt really strange. It was kind of like, oh, I'm not checking emails today and I'm not posting on social media and I'm not worried about podcast interviews or content or things I'm creating or, bringing money and clients into my business. I just completely let myself relax. And it took probably about 3 days before I got into that mode. And then once I got into that mode, it was so awesome. I just gave myself space to sleep and relax and enjoy. And after about a week of that, I really felt like the creative juices started flowing again in my mind. And that's when I know that I've had time to relax and recover and all of that good stuff. And so I felt like having a vacation was amazing. Both my husband and I were like, yep, this is a yearly thing for us. We can't wait to schedule our next one. And taking it fully offline, I think, is the key, because like I said in the past, I've certainly had vacations, but I would often be doing work or I just have a couple of things to do or a couple of things to check. And it's so amazing how even having, 10 minutes of something to do can really bring your brain back into that work mode versus that relaxation mode. And it's hard to get out of that. Like I said, it took me about 3 full days of being offline to actually get to the point of not feeling in that work mode. And so if you're kind of casually checking every day, of course, it's going to be, a big struggle to get into that relaxation mode. So going fully offline and trusting that you've communicated and you've got your systems in place and all of that good stuff is really important. Now, how do you do that if you're financially dependent on hourly work and classes and that type of thing? That's a great question. And, a lot of my work is dependent on that type of thing because I consult with teachers and studios, and if my podcast isn't going out, like I'm really not making that much money. And basically like I said, planned ahead for this. So I was able to budget ahead of time what needed to happen in the beginning of Q4 in order for me to take the last 2 weeks off. So if you're looking at doing something like this, looking at front loading your work and your income, or even in your more lucrative months, putting a bit of that money towards months where you're going to take vacation, I think is one of the best ways you can do this. And then also looking at ways that you can have more recurring revenue come into your business through things like memberships and courses and that type of thing. So one other thing that I want to talk about when it comes to taking vacations is the coming back from vacations and how to schedule that and how to handle it and all of that stuff. One of the things that always really stresses me out about the idea of taking a vacation is coming back from vacation. When I worked in corporate, this used to stress me out, and it stresses me out even more now that I'm running my own business. And so one thing that I actually did is I spent probably about 2 hours actually prior to coming back on January 4th going through my inbox. And what I did is I went through, I archived junk things, I read things that were relevant to me, and I assigned tasks for the week. And anything that needed responding to, I scheduled my response. So I scheduled the response for the following day, and that way nobody knew that I was online before I actually was supposed to be back online. And so this is actually a cool little hack if you're ever working late at night or you're working on the weekends or that type of thing, is to just schedule your email to go out during work hours. So that can be really helpful to making sure that people are really respecting your time and respecting your work hours while doing work when it's best for you. And so I basically started with, I think it was like 200 emails or something crazy like that, and just worked my way down to probably about 55. And there wasn't like that many that I actually needed to respond to or take that much action on. It was just a lot of, CC back and forth with different things that were going on with the various studios and clients and that type of thing that I work with. And I felt like it was so helpful for me mentally with my stress levels to just know that, Sunday night I had gone through everything and felt really set up for the week ahead. And this is something that if you are somebody who stresses about this type of thing, I would highly recommend. For me, I feel like I would have slept like crap on Sunday night had I not done this, because I just would have been stressed about what was in my inbox and how much was there and how long it was going to take me to get through and that type of thing, especially since I had calls on Monday. I often have 2 regular studio calls on Mondays, and I wanted to be prepared to jump into those and make sure that I was just getting back to the things I needed to get back to. And then when it comes to actually scheduling a week back from vacation, I would actually really recommend, if you can, to give yourself a couple of days to ease back into things where you don't have too much going on. I unfortunately didn't do that. Not only did I move to a new city in Mexico, I had a couple of calls, a couple of different coaching and teaching gigs that required me to be online, and I needed to move Airbnbs. So all of that meant that at the time of recording this now, I've had a pretty busy, stressful week. So this is my work for next year. It's just keeping in mind that I did a lot of things really well this vacation, and I'm really happy with how everything went. But next year, the week that I come back, there's going to be nothing on the calendar in terms of calls or definite obligations that need to happen the first at least 2 to 3 days that I'm coming back online. So that's what I would recommend to you. If you are not taking vacations in your business, I would really recommend that you are. Start to set some boundaries, start to set some time off for yourself, and start to really give yourself this space from your business, because you're working hard and you definitely deserve it. And before we wrap up this episode, I just wanted to talk briefly about what to expect ahead for 2021. I'm really excited for this year, and I can't wait to share what is in the plans for M.B.Om this year. So let's dive into that before we wrap up this episode. So this year, my goal with M.B.Om is really to connect more with you and to be providing as many resources as possible. So at the end of 2020, I did a big website revamp. If you haven't visited the site since we redid it, head on over to mbomyoga.com and check it out. One of the things that I'm really excited about is that there's now different sections based on who you are. If you are a newer yoga teacher, a more advanced yoga teacher, or a studio owner, I've separated all of our free and paid resources on pages just for you based on who you are. So I really, really love this aspect of the website, and this is really going to link to a lot of the things that I'm working on this year. So you can expect a couple of different courses for all of the different markets that I'm working with. So the new teachers, the more advanced teachers, and then the studio owners. And I currently have a I think it's pretty fun project in the works with studio owners. And so if anyone is listening who is a yoga studio owner, so somebody who owns a brick and mortar studio or is running a studio online, or is a yoga teacher who is currently running their own independent business from their home, doing all of the marketing and class planning, all of that, you are considered a studio owner to me. I am looking to support you with a couple of different projects and workshops and fun things I have going on, and I'm looking to talk to a couple of you. So if you are listening and you are like, I could use some support, some community, please email me, info@mbomyoga.com. Let me know you've listened to this episode, that you're interested in chatting more, and I will reach out to you about setting up a time to talk more. So we have some fun stuff coming down the pipeline with that. And then the other thing I'm really excited about is I'm going to be hosting some free workshops over the next couple of months. I pulled people both on social media and in my private Facebook community to get a couple of ideas for these things. So that is in the works. And these are going to be at the end of January and the end of February. So stay tuned for that. I will, of course, let you know on the podcast once that's all ready to go. But the best place to watch for updates is on social media and then through my email list. So when you head on over to the website to check out the new updates, sign up for the mailing list, and then you'll be the first to know when those workshops go live. And if you have any workshop suggestions or things you want to learn, make sure you reach out, let me know. So we are going to be continuing the podcast weekly. So you're going to hear from some amazing guests. I spent a really good chunk of Q4 of 2020 recording a lot of episodes. So we have a ton of great content for the start of this year that I'm really excited to dive into starting next week. And then we'll be doing the workshops. You can expect some courses and some other fun stuff coming down the pipeline. And then, of course, we have M.B.Om Behind the Scenes, which is the behind the scenes membership. It is weekly content that you don't hear publicly on the feed. And I'm really excited because this week's episode is going to be with Elmar Hacker, who is talking all about retreats and creating adventures around the world. And he doesn't really run yoga retreats, but he runs retreats around kite surfing and health and wellness. And it's a really cool episode. Of course, I know we're limited with travel right now due to the pandemic, but borders are opening every day. And soon enough, I think we're going to be back on our way with all these types of things. So if you've been thinking that a international retreat or maybe a retreat in your own backyard might be something fun, and you want to hear a different sort of perspective on how to create a business with this, not necessarily just from a yoga teacher, this is a really cool full-length bonus episode that's out on Behind the Scenes this week. It'll be out on Wednesday, so you can expect it very, very soon. So if you are interested in getting that, plus all of the content that's out there, we have over 15 episodes already out there talking about everything from money mindset to tips for yoga teachers to how to run great workshops and much more. So you can find that at patreon.com/M.B.Om yoga. All right, we're going to wrap up our episode here. I just wanted to give one more shout out to the sponsor of the show, Offering Tree. Thank you so much to Offering Tree for making this episode possible. For all of you listening, please go check out Offering Tree. It is seriously the best platform for yoga teachers looking to up their digital marketing game. Everything from websites to an online store and everything in between. You can head on over to offeringtree.com/MBM for that. All right, thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to M.B.Om.yoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.